and Oxnard Airport Authority. It's July 14th, 2022, and it's 6:32. Can we have a roll call, please?
Chair, would you like to do the Pledge of Allegiance?
Oh, yes. Thoughts. Thank you. Mr. Milche, will you lead us in the pledge?
Sure thing. Everyone please stand. Pledge. Right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the
of the
United
States of America
and
and to the republic
for
for which it stands,
one nation,
one nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with liberty
with
and
liberty
justice for all.
and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, let's go ahead with roll call.
Absolutely. For Camarillo Airport Authority, Supervisor Long,
Here.
Supervisor Ramirez,
Yes, I'm here.
Mayor Molche,
Present.
Chair Santangelo,
Here.
Vice Chair Bear. Mr. Bear, I think you are on mute.
And now I'm not, and I'm here.
Thank you so much. Camarillo has a quorum. For Oxnard Airport Authority, Supervisor Long,
Here.
Supervisor Ramirez,
Here.
Councilmember Peralta.
Here.
Chair Lopez is running late. I will announce when she arrives. And Mark King.
Here,
Oxnard has a quorum.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to agenda review. Are there any changes to the agenda?
Chair, this is Director Freitas. We do have a change to item E, which has to do with the acceptance of an FAA grant. The estimated amount is not $9,057,126, but is $8,151,414. And we'll review that, but that is the one change.
All right. Thank you for that. Okay, we'll move on to the approval of the minutes. I'll start with Camarillo. Any changes to the minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. We'll go ahead with a roll call vote, please.
Supervisor Long,
Yes.
Supervisor Ramirez,
Yes.
Mayor Molche,
Yes.
Chair Santangelo,
Yes.
Vice Chair Bear.
Yes,
That motion passes unanimously.
Okay. I'll go ahead and just call for the same for Oxnard.
I'll move approval of the minutes.
Second,
There's a motion and a second. Let's go ahead with roll call vote.
Supervisor Long,
Yes.
Supervisor Ramirez,
Yes.
Councilmember Peralta, Mr. Peralta.
yes.
Thank you. Mark King.
yes,
That motion passes unanimously 4-0.
Okay. All right, it's now time for public comment. Go ahead and let you read the statement and
If you would like to be added to the public comment queue, please be connected via Zoom. If not already connected and wish to make a public comment, you can find the Zoom link on the last page of the meeting agenda, which can be found at vcairports.org/meeting-calendar. If you wish to make a public comment on agenda item number 5, please press the raise hand button now, or if you're calling in today, press star then 9 to be added to the speaker queue. Thank you.
Chair, we have chairs. We have Ben Di Benedetto, who is asking to make public comment.
okay, let's go ahead.
All right, well, Mr. Di Benedetto, you have 3 minutes and you may unmute and go ahead. Looks like you're still on mute. Mr. Di Benedetto, you're on mute. You can come off mute. You can make your comment. Well, perhaps while we're making connection, we can do some written comments.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Lights.
The first comment is from Randy Scuria. It reads, "Good evening, all. I reviewed the proposed fly-friendly graphics for the Oxnard Airport and have some concerns. Over the last few months, I have noticed that most of the planes taking off and flying straight out to the ocean have been banking left immediately after arriving over the beach sand and come back over the houses, causing us to get both takeoff noise and flyover noise. The graphics show an ideal flight path along the ocean, which doesn't happen in reality. And if they do fly south, it's over the sand, creating noise for beachgoers. The operative word, quote, voluntary, unquote, means this is not a FAA mandated proposal and thusly has no enforcement teeth. Most importantly, how do we get this proposal out to all the Southern California flight schools that constantly use Oxnard Airport? Thank you for your consideration. Randy Scuria, Oxnard Shores resident, 35 years, end of comment." The next comment is from Phyllis and Paul Singer. It reads, "Dear Airport Authority, my solution in order of priorities. Number 1, all small planes should bank to the right over the area of power plant, not over residential areas. Number 2, shut down flight school. If not, make the planes bank right over the power plant also. Number 3, if not, stop the touch and goes as other majority of small airports have done. Number 4, charge a fee for every touch and go as many airports have done. Number 5, most importantly, quote, accountability, unquote, which there is none at this time. Making each pilot aware of consequences of not following new flight plan. Will have to pay a fine. Thank you for your time. Please help our neighborhoods put an end to our noise and air pollution emissions. Respectfully submitted, Phyllis and Paul Singer, Oxnard Shores," end of comment. The last written comment we received is from Mr. Joe Gosland. It reads, "Good evening. We have had 2 airplane crashes, one out of Camarillo with a fatality and significant economic disruption, and the other out of Oxnard, both near the Oxnard Airport in the last 30 days. This airport is a magnet for hundreds of flights per month by small, older, lead-fueled airplanes using the airport for touch and go training, which is exposing children and adults to toxic lead, not to mention the fact that the Oxnard Airport loses more than $1.6 million per year. The airport was kept open to provide passenger traffic to residents of Oxnard, which it hasn't done for 14 years and clearly will never do again. It now exists as an attractive nuisance. It seems to me that it is beyond time for Airport Authority to seriously consider shutting down this dangerous airport. Respectfully submitted, Joe Gosselin, end of comment."
Susan.
Okay, I believe we can join with Ben Di Benedetto. Ben, if you're ready.
I'm ready. Thank you so much. I apologize for my technical glitch at the beginning there. The last 2 meetings I've done that. As you know, we had a plane crash at Oxnard a few days ago. This particular aircraft lost power at 6,500 feet and began a steep spiral and turning procedure to execute an emergency landing at Oxnard Airport. All in all, the experienced pilot did a very good job avoiding hitting any structures, during which was no doubt a life-threatening event for him and the people on the ground. He flew over the tower, the park at Patterson and Fifth, the Boys and Girls Club, a heavily populated neighborhood, 2 in fact, and the proposed new park across the street from the runway on Ventura Road, which ironically has an airport viewing hillside plan for parkgoers to watch incoming aircraft. All of this without power. He was very good and very lucky, and so were we. It would be an understatement to say that his skill set is far superior to that of the trainee pilots who fly constantly over our homes, neighborhoods, and schools on a daily basis. This was the second event in 60 days, with the first pilot not being so lucky, crashing in a field and unfortunately died in the process. The increased development around the airport is a limiting factor to holding off similar events. The airport is surrounded on 3 sides by developments that literally skirt the runway. And the proposed Teal Club development would border the north side of the runway and landlock it with residents, businesses, parks, and schools. It's really time to think about how important this airport is in relationship to the community. Thank you. Oh, also, I have comments on H and J, but we'll get there. Thank you.
Well, we have Joni Conterno. You may unmute and 3 minutes.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to share my thoughts. As a homeowner in Oxnard Shores, I ask that a hard and close look go into what value the Oxnard Airport serves this community. The overwhelming impact is negative. First, there's a negative bottom line with a loss of $1.6 million annually. Second, flights over occupied areas are extremely unsafe. We just experienced 2 plane crashes in Oxnard within 30 days of each other. Third, touch and go flight mismanagement results in the following negatives. Touch and go training flights provide no income. They're allowed to fly over occupied areas as low as 700 feet. Flight schools use older aircraft, which are excruciatingly loud. The use of leaded fuel is causing an environmental hazard. The attempts to manage the touch and go flight patterns are voluntary and merely a suggestion. Pilots can choose to fly over occupied areas without recourse. There can be multiple touch and go flights in the pattern, causing relentless disturbance and negative impact to the community safety and well-being. Flight schools from outside the area performing touch and go training are being put before the people in the community they come and fly over. If 60% of flights out of Oxnard Airport are touch and goes, bringing negative impact to the surrounding area, they should be halted. Therefore, investing $9 million on taxiways for them to use is throwing good money after bad. Camarillo Airport is just miles away. It's profitable. It makes sense. The Oxnard Airport would serve the community of Oxnard best by being redeveloped into projects that bring prosperity to Oxnard. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. We have David Cronshaw.
Yes, thanks, Dave. Thank you, Airport Authority members. My name is David Cronshaw, resident of Oxnard and one of the neighborhood council members who manually tracks on a daily basis the Oxnard Airport flight training. And then just wanted to give you a couple of perspectives that I've seen in the last couple of months. I've seen a marked improvement in the Ventura County local flight school training patterns. This is the Ventura County local flight school training patterns over Oxnard. So I wanted to bring a little bit of positive news to these public comments. I know you guys get hammered all the time, but in general, the local flight schools are staying either above Woolley, or north of West Woolley Road, which is a positive thing and a positive change from the last year or so. However, as mentioned in the previous comments by Ben and others who are in Oxnard Shores, there are still some instances of flights that are turning early and left and banking over Oxnard Shores. But like I said, overall, the Ventura County local flight school training patterns have improved. So I wanted to thank Director of Airports Keith Freitas, Deputy Director of Airports Dave Nafee, and the County of Ventura Department and Airport staff for your continued work. I know you're out there contacting flight schools and educating these flight schools. So I, on a personal level, do really appreciate your work. And it is starting to be noticed on a positive level for that. I also wanted to just kind of point out, even with this good news for the Ventura County local flight training schools, we are still seeing some of the there still needs to be some work with the LA-based schools, mainly the ones down at Santa Monica and Van Nuys. We're seeing some instances of them with their training sites that are way south of Woolley and other patterns that are directly over Oxnard Shores. So there's only about 5 Santa Monica or Van Nuys flight schools that are constantly, consistently ignoring these our voluntary noise procedures. So I would recommend that all of the authority members, keep an eye out on these schools and to maybe help Dave and Keith and the other staff in getting involved with maybe educating these Santa Monica and Van Nuys flight schools that might not be aware of our voluntary rules for both Camarillo, noise abatement rules for both Camarillo and Oxnard. So really appreciate the work. Thank you for the time. Thank you so much.
Very well. And Barb Filkins just had her hand raised, so she's being promoted. And when she's ready, we'll give her 3 minutes. Barb, you're on mute. If you'd like to come off, we'll give you 3 minutes. You're ready to go.
There I go. Sorry, guys. I just would like to say that before people jump in with both feet and laud pilots on this accident that just occurred at Oxnard and or the incident at, or the accident at Camarillo on the 10th of June, I think you might want to wait until the NTSB has completed its investigation. There may be facts coming out that might change the perspective of what caused those crashes. And one of the things to bear in mind is an airplane flies in 3 dimensions, not in 2 like a car. You need to be a little bit more careful on some of the basic things that you do when you drive your car as opposed to fly your airplane. End of comment.
All right, very good. We have no more public members wishing to speak.
Thank you, everybody, for your comments. All right, we're going to move right along to new business. And we'll start with item A, which is a presentation on Wings Over Camarillo Air Show.
Yes, Director Freitas would like to just introduce, we have invited the Director of Operations for Wings Over Camarillo, Bob Trimborn, to kind of give a presentation for the longstanding air show that's held at the Camarillo Airport last many years. And Bob, if you're ready to take it off.
I am. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Hi, I'm Bob Trimborn. As Keith said, I'm the Director of Operations for the Wings Over Camarillo Air Show. And just for full transparency, I'm also a member of the Aviation Advisory Commission. So we're having an air show this year, August 20th and 21st at the airport. It's hosted by the Camarillo Wings Association, and it's probably one of the largest single events that the county has. Next slide, please. So let's have an air show. So this is an aerial shot of how the air show is laid out. There's 2 distinct ramps. There's the east ramp, which is the one closest to you on the screen. And then there's the west ramp, which is over by the Commemorative Air Force. We get about, I guess, next slide, please. So it's, again, we're hosted by, or produced by the Camarillo Wings Association. We're an all volunteer nonprofit organization, and it's supported by the Commemorative Air Force, the Southern California chapter wing, and then the Experimental Aircraft Association, EA chapter number 723, Ventura County 99s, and of course the Camarillo Department of Airports. And our mission is to promote youth in science and aviation and further in the education of Ventura County youth through leadership and service. They really don't teach the history of aviation anymore in schools. And so the air show kind of helps educate the youth and the community about the value of aviation. But one of the biggest things we do for the community is we're the largest donator of funds to nonprofits within the county. And over the last 11 years, as you can see on the slide, we've donated in excess of $531,000 back to local nonprofits who provide volunteers and support for the air show. Last year, we were recognized by the city of Camarillo as the Outstanding Nonprofit of the Year. Next slide, please. So why do we do this? Well, we do it to preserve our aviation history. It's only been around a very short time, believe it or not. Aviation is about 120 years old. So it's fun to preserve that aviation history and again, impart that to our youth. We also do it to remember our veterans who served in all the wars, including Desert Storm and Vietnam and World War II. And again, inspire the youth to explore aviation as a viable future and a potential place to get employment. We showcase unique piloting skills. We share our aviation passion and enthusiasm. And again, educate the community on the value of the services of the airport. Provide a venue for our local non-sponsors and vendors. And this is our 41st year. Go ahead. So we draw attendees from around the region, including Ventura, LA, Santa Barbara, and San Luis Obispo counties. Average attendance is around 15,000 over the last 2 days. Last year, we set all attendance records for the air show. And it was really a great event. It was amazing. We had so many people show up. We came within about 20 car spaces of maxing out the airport for auto parking. To the right, you can see the demographics that we've done, or analysis we've done on the people that do come to the event. A lot of families attend, and it's a really big family-oriented event. Next slide. So what do we do? What kind of activities are there? For those that have never been, which I hope you will come this year, we have a lot of fun activities, including aerobatics, flybys. There's actually pyrotechnics. We have historic and current military aircraft on display, general aviation aircraft, search and rescue helicopters, and many more. There's also a science and technology, engineering and math pavilion, STEM. And of course, Commemorative Air Force has their museum open. And in that museum is the Veterans Hangar, which is there so that people can meet with veterans and talk about their experiences. We also have a classic car show and a parade. About 200 cars are on display every day, and a whole plethora of food and vendor booths for the public. If you get there early enough, you can also get rides on a helicopter or warbirds, but it's for a fee. Next slide. So our theme this year is Women in Aviation, tremendous contribution that women have made in the history of aviation, going all the way back to the early days of aviation up to the present. Not only piloting, but air traffic controllers and flight attendants and all the other mechanics even, all the contributions they made in the history of aviation. Next slide. Our Grand Marshals this year are Commander Cloet, I can't pronounce your last name, Lazenka, with the U.S. Navy VX-30 Bloodhounds based at Point Mugu, and Martha Phillips, who was the past president of the International 99s, which is a large women's organization, who was president from 2008 to 2012. Interesting thing about the 99s is the reason they have that number is way back in the 20s when they first formed the first women's organization, they couldn't figure out what to call themselves. And someone looked down at the roster and saw there were 99 women that had signed the roster for the meeting. And that's where the name came from. 99 women showed up to the very first meeting. Go ahead. So here's some of the headliners. Vicki Benzinger, she flies a very beautiful biplane, as you can see in the background. John Culver, who flies an SNJ, which is a military trainer. Go ahead. And we have returning this year is Red Bull helicopter flown by Aaron Fitzgerald. If you've never seen a helicopter fly like this, it's truly amazing. And that picture is not doctored. You can actually fly the aircraft upside down. We also have Tom Larkin, who's going to fly this little mini jet you see in the lower right-hand part of the screen. It'll be on display at the STEM Pavilion. It's one of the smallest jets in the air, and they do a beautiful aerobatic routine. Next slide. So we have pyrotechnics, which are very controlled and designed to enhance the overall experience of the show. and you'll see it basically be active during the air show portion of the event. And then we have a MiG-17 flown by Jason Soames, who's based at Santa Monica Airport. It's a beautiful airplane. It makes a great air show jet activity. Next slide. We actually also have local performers, Judy Phelps and Sammy Mason, who do incredible things with their aircraft. It's really fun to watch them fly. Next slide. So we have a lot of action in the air. We fly almost every aircraft that's on display, from military World War II aircraft to some trainers and experimental aircraft. And that lower right-hand picture is a picture of Sammy Mason interacting with our pyrotechnic display. Go ahead. We have a lot of static displays. As you can see, the C-17 will be back this year. There's helicopters. The A-10 will be on display, which is the one that's got all the smoke around it. And that aircraft in the right-hand portion of the screen is based out of Point Mugu. It's a local squadron that come over every year. They provide support for the fleet, radar support. Next slide. We also have, again, the antique car show and parade. Again, 200 cars each day. We base them around the aircraft on display, and we have a nice little parade during the event. Go ahead. The STEM Pavilion is very, very popular. Lots of children and kids come to want to check out the robotics, the drones, and the like. And it's really a great experience, and it's very, very popular. Next slide. Again, we have the veterans hangar. All the veterans are welcome to be in the hangar from whatever conflicts or not conflicts they've been in, as long as they've been veterans of military service. They're welcome to be there to interact with the public. Next slide. And again, it's a family-oriented event. That's the big emphasis that we have. It's a way of children to get exposed to aviation and the various aspects of it, and families to just to get together and enjoy their airport and the history of aviation. Next slide. So it can't be done alone. We have 50 non-paid volunteers that work literally every month of the year to help plan and organize the event. And then during the event, we have 400 volunteers that assist us throughout the weekend. We actually have a site on or a link on our website if you want to volunteer to become part of the event. The picture in the lower left-hand corner is actually a shot of the guys that perform or actually conduct the air show portion of the event. And they've been doing this for years, and they do it very safely, and they're very good at what they do. Next slide. So you can buy tickets online. Last year, we went to a ticketless system where people have to purchase their tickets online and show them from their cell phones. They can print out their ticket on their computers at home. But we've gone away from actually selling tickets at the gate. We'll do that if someone actually shows up and doesn't have the electronic media or whatever, we will try to accommodate them. But 98% of all attendees use electronic ticketing. Next slide. And that completes my presentation. Are there any questions from the authorities? Hearing none, next slide. I'll leave you with this one picture. So this is our wingsovercamarillo.com website link. You can get your tickets and event information there, and other general questions, as you can see. Mr. Thomas is there.
Mr. Trimborn, we do have some questions. It looks like Member Perello and then Supervisor Ramirez have raised their hands.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you very much for the presentation. It looks like a very impressive show. One very specific question. How do we handle, or your organization handle, the fallout from the pyrotechnic show? It appears it's very impressive, but whichever way the wind's blowing, it must impact certain areas of residential concern. How's this handled?
We do aggressive outreach to the community through the public information officers in Camarillo and the county. It's actually very localized. When you see it in person, it's not widespread. the smoke that you see is basically just disperses almost immediately. And we've never had an impact from the emissions from the pyrotechnics on any of the residential communities around the airport.
Okay, I personally feel you're very lucky, but thank you very much for answering the question.
Sure.
Supervisor Ramirez.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Lopez. Thank you, Mr. Trimborn. It seems like it's going to be a great show once again. I have a question. I am chair of the Ventura County Animal Services Commission, and I think a couple of authority members are also involved. And I just wondered if you've made contact with Jackie Rose, our director there, in terms of dealing with the animals, the dogs, the cats, the other animals, in terms of the noise issues. I think I don't remember if it was last year or before, there were some issues about that, and just want to make sure you do a outreach to the animal shelter folks to say this is coming. There may be things that can be done to lessen the impact on the animals there.
Supervisor Ramirez, I'd be happy to answer that, only because I have had those discussions with Director Jackie Rose already. So we are having discussions. She's aware of it. We'll continue to have updates as that progresses. As we get kind of the window, it looks like the window for air operations is going to be noon to 5 each day. So we'll continue to get that information out, not only to animal services, but quite frankly, our community as well.
Thank you.
And we also partner with the animal shelter. We've actually coordinated animal adoption or dog adoption with them. So one year they actually almost adopted every animal in the shelter out during the air show weekend. Unfortunately, this year we can't do that because just the 2 weekends don't fall on each other this time around. But yeah, we do aggressive outreach with the shelter. Bill Thomas has a very close relationship with them, so we're very cognizant of the animals that are there.
Thank you.
Chair Santangelo.
Hi, yes. So I wanted to kind of go back just to the pyrotechnics. I think I brought this up after the last air show that the pyrotechnic, not the display so much, but the noise was a little disarming for some of our residents, even though we knew it was happening. So I just wanted to make sure that you were aware of that, because there were some concerns about the noise at the last air show from that.
We are, and again, we do a lot of outreach to make sure that people understand it's just part of the show and not to be alarmed.
Okay, thank you.
Supervisor Long. Sorry, Chair Santangelo.
No.
Hi, thank you. I just think this is such a great event for Ventura County. It brings in so many people to know how special Ventura County is in our airports. Please make sure you send that information out to all of us so we can share it as well to our community. I think the more we advertise sooner, the more prepared our community is for any kind of noise or traffic or anything like that. So really appreciate the partnership, and also with working with the animal shelter as well. I've seen some emails go out. Thank you, Mr. Freitas, for doing the communication to the cities and the animal shelter. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Long. Thank you.
Thank you. And do we have any public comment?
Sorry, I was on mute. We don't have any public comment verbal, but.
Yes, I can read a quick announcement. If you wish to make a public comment on agenda item number 6A, please press the raise hand button now. Or if you're calling in today, press star then 9 to be added to the speaker queue. Thank you.
Okay, just trying to give a quick second in case anyone raised their hand, but thank you so much for the presentation, Mr. Trimborn. And if there are no comments or any raised hands, I think we can move on to the next item. Although Chair Santangelo, I apologize and appreciate you taking the lead with the meeting today, but I just realized what the items currently fall under the Camarillo Authority. So I will hand it over to you and we'll jump in when it turns over to Oxnard.
Sounds good. No problem. Do we need to have a motion to receive and file this?
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, so let's go ahead with a roll call vote.
Supervisor Long,
Yes.
Supervisor Ramirez,
Yes.
Mayor Molche,
Yes.
Chair Santangelo,
Yes.
Vice Chair Bear.
Yes.
That motion passes unanimously.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on then to item 6B. And I will pass this on to staff. This is the sixth amendment to the lease with Fresh Concepts.
This is Director Freitas, and I will pass it on to our lease manager. Madeline is with us tonight. Madeline, if you would give the background.
Sure. Can you hear me fine?
Yes.
Okay, great. For those that aren't aware, Fresh Concepts is the code name for the Waypoint Cafe.
Oh,
This is the Sixth Amendment for this old lease, which predates the Waypoint Cafe. And actually, the Waypoint Cafe has been operating under this lease since 2008, but the lease goes back to 1993 and has been amended, as you note, several times. This is an authorization, a request for an authorization to allow us to amend the lease, which adds 5 years to the existing term, which would take it out to approximately 2044, if exercised all the options. And most importantly, you may have noticed during COVID that the cafe was expanding out into the runway area of the viewport for social distance seating. So this would allow us to get that space back and also obligate the operator to spend an additional $200,000 in capital improvements to the cafe and modify the percentage rent somewhat. Other than that, are there any questions about the document itself or the concepts?
And Madeline, if I could just add a bit to that, I want to point out that candidly, the Waypoint Cafe, for those that are not pilots in the area, is probably the single most important marketing tool the airport has. If you're not a pilot, don't necessarily know about the Camarillo Airport, you know about the Waypoint Cafe. So locking them in for another 5 years, which brings it, out to 22 years from now, is very important for us. So I just wanted to add that point.
Thank you. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Looks like Mr. Bear has his hand up. You want to go ahead?
I do. Not really a question, just a comment that, and Director Freitas just touched on this, that the Waypoint is such a tremendous asset, not only to the airport, but to the community at large. I know so many people who, when I say I live in Camarillo and they don't live in the area, they say to me, oh, what's that restaurant at your airport that's so good? And it's a destination spot. And I know for years before I lived in Camarillo, I'd fly up to Camarillo, have lunch at the Waypoint and fly back. So I'm glad to see they're going to be with us for at least another 5 more years and hopefully longer than that. It's really a great operation, wonderful people there, and the food's terrific. If anybody watching hasn't been, they should go.
True.
Thanks, Mr. Bear. Mr. Perello.
Thank you. I've had tremendous food at this facility, but I want to ask a very basic question. What is the policy of this organization with respect to a lease? Do we put the lease out for others to apply? I mean, from 1993 to potentially 2024, It's not the same operator, but it's the same lease. Do we put the lease out for others to bid to take over the lease? Hopefully county council is at this meeting and they can address that issue. If not, I think it needs to be agendized. When I first came on this board a few years ago, there was a contract that never went out to bid. And it seemed to ruffle feathers when I asked that question. And, I apologize if I'm ruffling feathers, and I intend to still pursue having meals at this restaurant. But I think it's a public business question that needs to be asked. When does an operation that we have jurisdiction go out for the opportunity for some other person to bid on the opportunity to operate the business?
I'll take the first shot at their response is that, it's typically when a lease has a fully expired, we wrestle with two things, is that we don't necessarily want a good operating business to leave us. And if you had an opportunity where a business who still, in this case, has 17 years with us, we'd like to see them invest in this business and continue that business. So, typically it's if a lease expires and the tenant is walking away, we would then put that parcel out. Good example is we did that with Oxnard and Camarillo. We had vacant parcels. We did that at Oxnard for our 5 and 7 acres recently. We put those parcels out for bid solicitation to see who's interested. So typically, again, from a leasing standpoint, if a good business is still here and they're coming to us in advance and want to, if they only had a few years left, that might be a different story. 1 or 2 years left in a lease, we might let it expire and then put it out to bid. So it's kind of a case by case scenario.
If I can respond, Chair?
Go ahead.
Okay, just a little simple mathematics. I mean, a few more years on the lease, I understand that, but this will be 51 years. I believe there's people on this board that are not even 50 years old. And, I'm not a member of the Ventura County Taxpayers Association, but I know that they ask questions like this. And so I'm trying to potentially head off a little bit of embarrassment for the organization by asking it now. But I do appreciate the response. And I don't have a vote on this, but I believe the questions need to be asked. Thank you.
Supervisor Long?
Hi, thank you. And Councilmember Perillo, I wouldn't be embarrassed at all asking these questions. In fact, I would like to say thank you to the Waypoint for being so successful. As a company, we are fortunate to have a successful company at the Camarillo Airport. I know in the Oxnard Airport, we have tried to thrive those restaurants, and for one reason or another, they haven't been able to be as successful as the Waypoint. But I am completely for continuing this lease with them, and I appreciate that they have been working with us with the airport to make sure that their business is thriving, and yet we are continuing to do the general purpose airport, as we know that is our sole goal is for airports. But to have some place to come in, to have a lunch and then fly out is wonderful. And then also for our community, they come out just to see the airplanes go by. I love seeing the little kids' faces watching those planes and such. So I appreciate this, and staff making sure you checks and balances to make sure we're doing this correctly. And maybe there's some public comments, but once the time comes, I'd be happy to motion to approve staff's recommendations on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, do we have any more authority member comments? If not, I'll move on to public comment.
If you wish to make a public comment on agenda item number 6B, please press the raise hand button now, or if you're calling in today, press star then 9 to be added to the speaker queue. Thank you.
At this time, no public members wish to speak.
Okay, then we are ready for a motion.
Again, I motion to approve this as staff recommended. Thank you so much.
Moshe, I'll second.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion and a second. Let's have a roll call vote.
Supervisor Long,
Yes.
Supervisor Ramirez, okay, I can circle back to Supervisor Ramirez. Mayor Molche,
Yes.
Chair Santangelo,
Yes.
Vice Chair Bear,
Yes.
and Supervisor Ramirez.
I'm sorry, I could not get the mute off. Yes.
Thank you very much. That motion passes unanimously.
Okay. All right, so now we're moving on to our usual item for remote teleconference meetings. I don't think we need a staff report on this.
I'll
move the
motion to approve, or
Second.
I'll second, either way.
I'll take the second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Let's have a roll call vote.
Supervisor Long,
Yes.
Supervisor Ramirez,
Yes.
Mayor Molche,
Yes.
Chair Santangelo,
Yes.
Vice Chair Bear.
Yes.
That motion passes unanimously.
Okay, and now I will hand the meeting over to Chair Lopez.
Great. Thank you so much, Chair Santangelo. And again, thank you for starting off the meeting as I was transitioning. So the next item on the agenda for us is also the remote, the authorization for remote meeting, or I'm sorry. Yes, remote meeting. So any questions, comments, or otherwise, I will accept a motion.
I'll move to approve.
Second.
Thank you. Can we take a roll call vote, please?
Supervisor Long,
Yes.
Supervisor Ramirez,
Yes.
Councilmember Perallo,
Yes.
Chair Lopez,
Yes.
Mark King.
Yes.
That motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. And next up is the this is a long subject, so trying to brace for it. So this is on the taxiway grants. I'll just summarize it that way, and I'll ask Mr. Freitas or any staff if there's any presentation, please.
Yes, Director Freitas, as I mentioned, this was the amended dollar amount from the $9,057,126 up down to $8,151,414. And I will ask our projects administrator, Aaron Powers, to give a little background on it. Please, Aaron.
Good evening, Chair Lopez, authority members. Thank you, Keith. Last year, the airport bid a project to reconstruct the runway, the taxiway connectors, and also the parallel taxiway Foxtrot at Oxnard Airport. The project design was coordinated with the FAA and the possible funding opportunities. However, after we received bids, the FAA was only able to fund the runway portion of the project. We were fortunate to receive at that time a grant of approximately $14 million, and we reconstructed the runway with a full runway construction closure period involved. This year, working with the FAA, we repackaged the project to allow us the opportunity to obtain funding for the taxiway connector work. At the time of the design and bidding, the FAA indicated that funding may only be available to partially fund the work. And so we designed the project to fit the FAA's funding parameters. And so, Dave, if you could move 2 slides down. So we bid the project with a base bid to reconstruct taxiways Alpha and Echo, which are the 2 taxiway connectors, along with the relocation of a FAA power line that's currently located in a storm drain. And then we also, the bid alternate for this project then would allow us to reconstruct the 3 middle taxiways, Bravo, Charlie, and Delta. Recently, the FAA indicated that funding for the project is anticipated soon and that additional discretionary dollars may be available to even fund the base bid and the bid alternate, so the total project. We're certainly hopeful. So with that, staff is requesting your authority recommend the Board of Supervisors accept a grant if offered for Oxnard Airport in the estimated amount of just about $8.1 million. The actual grant amount will be dependent upon whether the base bid only or the base bid and bid alternate are able to be funded. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Powers. Any questions from authority members? And do we have any public comment if you want to go ahead and read the statement, Hannah?
Yes, absolutely. If you wish to make a public comment on agenda item number 6E, please press the raise hand button now, or if you're calling in today, press star then 9 to be added to the speaker queue. And while we're waiting to see if any folks raise their hand, I can read a written comment that was received.
Yes, please.
Thank you. This comment is from Susan Tatum. It reads, regarding funds for Oxnard Airport taxiway connectors, etc. At the July 11th Airport Advisory Meeting, agenda items E and F were unanimously passed with little discussion, and there is a significant question that should be answered. What is the rationale for considering a potentially $10 million plus investment in an airport that is A, not needed, and B, provides no value to most of the residents in the communities in which it is located? The Oxnard Airport is an economic drain. According to the 22-23 budget, it loses $2 for every $1 it takes in. The property the airport sits on is far more valuable to the community than a money-losing airport. It has been estimated that if this land were to be developed for homes, commercial, and/or agriculture, it would generate approximately $2 million a year in property taxes alone. Camarillo Airport is just 6 miles away. It is profitable and is surrounded by plenty of fields that allow it to be operated without the noise and safety intrusions Oxnard Airport is currently subjecting its neighbors to. Those of us who live and pay taxes in the area are extremely concerned with the negative impact Oxnard Airport is having on our lives. To approve a multi-million-dollar grant and the accompanying requirements without further considering the issues of safety, peace, and economic opportunity in the area is fiscally irresponsible. Please consider not approving this. Thank you, Susan Tatum, Oxnard Shores. End of comment.
Thank you. And it looks like we do have a hand raised.
Yes, we're promoting Bill Thomas. And I'm chairs, I need to do manual timing. I'm having a little glitch with the computer 3-ring circus I've got here. So I will be timing this without benefit of having it on the screen. So Bill, go ahead if you're ready.
Can you hear me?
Gotcha.
Yes.
Far away.
Okay, for some reason or another, I've lost the audio from you, but as long as you can hear me, I'll continue. I just wanted to point out that I think that people who want to put the early demise of Oxnard as an airport are very short-sighted. I think that the future inside the next 10 years for electric-powered aircraft to be feeders from Oxnard to LAX is incredibly viable, and Oxnard is perfectly suited with its size and its terminal already in place to fill that role. I've talked to some of my aviation friends who are looking at what's happening in the electric airplane world, and I think that inside 10 years you're going to see commuter aircraft of 10 to 20 people, and then it'll go up to 50. that will be totally capable of electric drive flight from Oxnard to LAX and get us back into not being one of the few counties in California that don't have a viable commercial airport. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. And Supervisor Ramirez, go ahead.
Yes, I do have a question, and I've had this discussion with our director, and I do think the issue of economic viability, and I recognize what Member Thomas is saying, but I do think I would like to ask: is this something? What is the deadline to approve this, Ms. Powers? What's our timeline here?
Well, with this item is currently scheduled to go to the board on its last meeting before your dark in August on July 26th.
Okay.
The FAA will, their federal fiscal year ends, I believe, September 1st.
30th.
September 30th, and then it's October 1st starts the new year. So there is an opportunity. We do have a issue potentially with the construction contract, which is the item that will follow, because we do have a bid expiration date. The contractor has already been holding the bid for 120 days, waiting for the FAA grant to come in, and that expires August 23rd.
I do think, though, the questions raised about economic viability need to have at the appropriate time, which is not this meeting, the discussion about what the things that Ms. Tatum raised and others have raised. We don't have passenger service. I understand it's unlikely we're going to get passenger service in the near future. It's great to assume that things are going to be better economically, but it's not the case now. So I would have liked to have more time to really consider those things. We are hoping for better economics, and I know there's some plans in the works, but I'm feeling concerned about the economic viability of our airport here, because it has not been financially successful. So I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Long?
Thank you. Appreciate it. First of all, I would like to say thank you to staff. Mrs. Powers, I think you've done a great job, and everyone else, in regards to making sure that the safety of our pilots is really key, and putting these airstrips, making sure the resurfacing is there is really important. And so are these taxiways. I think that the funding, thank you to the FAA for making sure that this funding is there, and that we are doing it. One way or another, there's many businesses at this airport, which the viability of getting this done is important. So I guess I see the Oxnard Airport as a big, thriving, maybe we need to do even better for the economics of it, but I think that that's an important part of Ventura County. So I want to see it prosper as best as I can, and I believe that this is another way of doing that. So thank you so much for making sure the taxiways are done as well as the airstrip. So I really do appreciate it, and I support this. Thank you.
Thank you. Chair Santangelo?
Thank you. I know I'm not officially on the Oxnard Authority, but I wanted to make a comment. You know, last meeting, I believe it was the last meeting, that Mr. Freitas really did I thought, a really good job of talking about the importance of the airports to our communities and the economic benefit to our communities, and discussed it as as an enterprise fund. So it's not really taking money from the community when we talk about a loss. So I just wanted to kind of reiterate that, we did have this, I thought, really good presentation that really talked about the importance of the airports. Maintenance of these taxiways, I suppose I can ask, what happens if we don't do this work to these taxiway connectors? I would think that if we don't do this work and we need the airport, it's going to be more expensive later. So that's my question.
I would answer that. I'll take that. Yes, the pavements, and I would point out that we did take monies to redo, $14 million to redo the runways. We initially were trying to do all of this pavement and couldn't get all of the funding all at one time. So we do need to keep the airfield operational to redo these pavements from a safety standpoint. So, yes, we can have that discussion about the economics. I would agree that we need to do a better job. I think we're heading in that direction. That doesn't happen overnight, but and I'll talk about some of those things, but happy to discuss those in the future.
Thank you. Mr. Bear.
I just wanted to emphasize, I think it's important, and Director Freitas or Ms. Powers might want to expand on this, but we're not talking about Ventura County tax dollars. This money comes from the Aviation Trust Fund via grant by the FAA. And as it's been explained to me, when we buy a plane ticket, money goes into the Aviation Trust Fund. And so that money then comes out via FAA grants. So the point I'm making is just that this isn't taxpayer dollars, and we're dealing with something far different.
Thank you. Councilmember Perello.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate the comments that have been made. I'd like to follow up on Santangelo's comment. It was identified as an enterprise fund. It's not a standalone Oxnard, standalone Camarillo. It's an enterprise fund, the Airport Authority. Very similar to other things that are enterprise funds. But I do want to remind the members of both boards, this issue of the residents and the concerns is not going away. Some of the suggestions I consider are so far out in left field, it's not funny, but the issues are not going away. And as far as bringing commuter travel back in, if we're going to put things on the table, I'd like to see commuter travel, being that Camarillo has a larger runway closer to the freeway, that we focus on Camarillo. I know that's not popular. And there's been changes recently identified in the newspaper about how that flew with the public. But the complaints, it is not simply some wackos in a certain area of a certain community that are concerned. And the viability of the airport, I believe the people that have been on this board for a while can say the previous two directors for the Airport Authority had been under a lot of pressure to make Oxnard produce more money. I don't know how we would do it. I know suggestions are made, but I don't want it to all fall on Mr. Freitas' head that he's got to turn a profit on this thing. Because if we do, I would support him by taking some of the businesses that are in Camarillo and having them relocate to Oxnard. Well, even the playing field. I support this move. It's very much like getting a facelift on the left side of your face, and then you forget to do the right side of your face. You got to put these connectors in. We spent a lot of money, and we tried to do it all in one time. Found out Miss Powers deserves some kind of crown for hanging in there and doing as good a job as she's doing. My hat's off to you, Miss Powers. But these other underlying issues of people questioning about the noise, it was reported earlier, having spent some time at the neighborhoods, I can tell you the numbers that were quoted of how many people are turning short in certain neighborhoods. I'd like to have them come with me and I'll show you times when it's not turning short, when it is turning short in certain neighborhoods. And that's what's generating a lot of the heat that is being presented. I learned this a long time ago. To motivate a person to take the time out of their life to come and make public comments and get involved, that's the tip of the iceberg. That's the tip of the iceberg in a community. But I support this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Perello. I appreciate the comments. I think touching on the many concerns throughout the community, and part of it is we're here to oversee specifically in our case, the Oxnard Airport. As it is a part of the community in Oxnard, but also as a function of the county, and to ensure that it is successful, or if there is a process in the future that changes the direction of the airport. But I think given where we're at right now, we do need to ensure that it is functioning, it is safe, and if it is going to lead into a discussion on its economic development as it relates to the entire community and the entire county, we should ensure that it is prepared to serve in that capacity. So I too support this. So Supervisor Ramirez.
Yeah, I want to just say that those, I am going to support this. I just do think we have to continue that conversation about how to make this airport not just viable, but safe. And now that we've had this, I'm telling you, I am disturbed by the accident I saw where it flew so close to neighborhood and then crashed into the fence right there at Ventura Road. I'm a little shook up by it. I know these accidents happen. They can happen anywhere, even in economically super viable airports. But I am getting kind of concerned. I know that we are going to have new development. I don't vote at Oxnard City Council, but I don't see a way around having a lot of housing right next door. And I just see the future. I'm concerned, but I am going to support this, and we'll thank Ms. Powers and staff for your work here. Yeah, we have to do this, but it's a continuing question I have about, in particular, safety. So I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Supervisor Ramirez. Definitely a lot of discussions that need to be ongoing as part of our work here. We have a raised hand by Mr. Tannehill.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Lopez, and thank you, Airport Authority members. I just want to comment on the Airport Improvement Program and the FAA grants. You know, the reality is these are federal taxes. They're not income taxes, they're not property taxes, but these are federal taxes that are collected every time anybody buys an airplane ticket. And it's also anytime anyone buys aviation fuel. Now, these taxes go into this fund, and this fund then is allocated out in the form of grants. But it's a finite fund, and it is federal money. So I've heard this said before, and I just want to kind of add some clarity to it. It's not income taxes, it's not estate taxes, but it is a federal tax that everybody who flies pays. It goes into this fund, and then, as Director Freitas will tell us, people compete for that fund, and not everybody gets funded. So when we get funded, maybe somebody else doesn't. So I just think when we look at these programs, we need to understand that they are indeed being funded through federal taxes, primarily 85 to 90% in this case. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tannehill. And if with no other questions or comments, I will open up for any action from the authority.
I'll motion to approve. Long.
Second, Camarillo.
Thank you. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Supervisor Long,
Yes.
Supervisor Ramirez,
Yes.
Councilmember Camarillo,
Yes.
Chair Lopez,
Yes.
Mark King.
Definite yes.
Thank you. That motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. And next item is 6F, and this is also on taxiway plans and specifications. So Mr. Freitas.
And I will pass this to Aaron again from our team.
Thank you, Chair Lopez and authority members, Director Freitas. Dave, would you mind advancing one slide to the recommendations? I'm going to go ahead and read the recommendations requesting your authority recommend the Board of Supervisors approval, because I believe there's an inconsistency in the packet documents that I noticed between the subject paragraph and recommendation number 3. The correct recommendation number 3 is up on the screen, and I'll go ahead and read through them just to make sure that it's clear to everyone. And I just ask you to bear with me. It is quite wordy.
Cool.
Recommendation number 1 would be to approve the plans and specifications for the taxiway connectors pavement reconstruction at Oxnard Airport, including addenda numbers 1 through 3. Number 2, waive any minor irregularities in the bids. 3, award a contract for the base bid Schedule 1 and Schedule 2 and/or bid alternate 1 to Granite Construction Company in amount not to exceed of $7,706,536 on the basis of the lowest responsible bid, conditioned upon receipt of a federal grant and/or Caltrans grant sufficient to fund no less than 85% of the project costs. And finally, authorize the Director of Airports or his designee to execute the subject contract if awarded. Dave, would you mind going back to the slide? Yes, you are on it. Thank you. As a reminder, the base bid would be base bid work would include the reconstruction of the connector taxiways Alpha and Echo, which are the 2 end connector taxiways, and the bid alternate would be the 3 middle connectors Bravo, Charlie, and Delta. One difference between this project and the runway project that I do want to call attention to, when we went into design for the runway and we did our public outreach with users of the airports, we did end up closing the airport for a period of nearly 3 months, which is a pretty significant impact to users. Many thanks to your authority, the Commission and Board of Supervisors. We also were, provided some rent relief during that period. But this work, for this phase of the work, we're actually going to accomplish all the work of whatever elements get awarded during the nighttime, which is very common in the aviation industry, especially for a single runway airport. So we will be closing the runway at night and reopening each day to air traffic. And we have been working closely with the FAA to make sure that we can offer this schedule of construction. Bids for the project were open on April 26th of 2022, and only one bid was received from Granite Construction Company. This really was a bit of a surprise and certainly a disappointment for us as we had advertised for the project. We also reached out to prime contractors, including the multiple contractors who had bid on the runway project, hoping that they would want to be involved in the next phase. After receiving the one bid, we followed up with some of the contractors who did not bid to understand what was going on and to consider if we should rebid the project. However, what we found was that there were multiple factors like the volatility of market prices, especially oil, supply chain issues that continue to be ongoing, and even staffing and capacity issues that some of the contractors are experiencing. Were all items that they actually cited for low turnout. We shared the bid results with the FAA, the fact that we only had one and that it was higher, much higher than our engineer's estimate. And we also provided the feedback with the FAA, and they believe they could still fund at least a portion of the project. And so the total project, if we are able to take this forward with the base bid and the bid alternate, would be in that amount that's there in the recommendations, which is approximately 30% over the engineer's estimate. If only the base bid is awarded, then the percentage goes up to 44% over, and that's where we've landed. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Powers. Supervisor Ramirez?
Yes, thank you. I think it's really curious that we only had one bidder for this kind of project. Can you say how did the staff advertise this possibility?
So we advertised in newspaper of local circulation. So that would be the VC Star. We also let some of our the aviation community know. And then we also, between the airport and our aviation consultant, our engineer, we contacted not only the firms that had bid on the runway project, but also firms that our consultant has worked with on other projects as prime contractors trying to bring interest in on the project.
Is there any thinking out there about why only one bid? Is this happening elsewhere as far as you know? It just seems unusual.
So certainly the results vary. So there's a lot of we're hearing from our consultant, because that's actually where they deal with multiple airports. They actually are seeing results all over the board. So some are getting very few bidders, some are very high prices. The combinations are there's not really a I was going to say one trend.
And Aaron, if I could add to that, being up in the Bay Area, 9 months ago, we saw some of that. We bid out a terminal building that the engineer estimate was $10 million, and the lowest bidder was $14 million, and the highest was $17 million. As Aaron kind of touched on, what we see particularly, and Aaron talked about this, that because of the timing of FAA grant funding, we asked them to hold prices for as much as 120 days, which isn't normal, if you're not doing an FAA project. Other projects, typically you get the award and, you get the notice to proceed, typically within 30 to 60 days in normal construction. But because of the FAA requirements and we're waiting for grant funding, they also got to hold these prices sometimes for a long time. In this case, it's 120 days. So it's all of those things that are factors of whether they're going to bid on something that's more risky, or, hey, we know that we can start immediately on some other project. So
could it also be supply chain, labor issues? Councilman Perrello and I were just in a meeting. We talked about lack of labor to do other things. We didn't talk about construction, but I'm just
100%. You're 100% on the money. No question about it.
Thank you.
This is Dave, if I could, just an observation of the construction industry in general, that there's been a whole lot more money put into construction and infrastructure by FAA and other agencies that fund transportation. But the number of contractors out there didn't change. So we find that all of them are busy, and the ones that Ms. Powers contacted are already committed to others. So they would maybe bid on our project, but they would bid sky high so that it would compete well for the other demands that they have for their labor force.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Perrello?
Thank you, Ms. Powers. Ms. Powers, you're to be complimented in my mind on a very specific point. You brought up the issue about a single bidder. You brought up the issue of a concern that it need to go possibly for a rebid. The fact that you brought that up to whoever you were dealing with is important, but the fact that you brought it up and shared it with the board is tremendously important to this board member. The explanation, you deserve 4 stars for this one. I can only tell you, not that I'm a spokesman for any construction company, but there may be a possibility that since Granite has a staging area just outside of that photograph that we're showing on the screen in the old Oxnard High School, because they're doing a lot of construction work in the city of Oxnard, that may have allowed them to have the bid. Where I have a question, can you please go back and explain You mentioned 30% above, and then you mentioned 40% above. I don't understand that explanation, but I do agree. Supervisor Ramirez explained it. Contractors are not as hungry as they were. And when you're not as hungry, you don't use as sharp a pencil. And you may not want the job. And in the process of may not wanting the job, you bid it extremely high, and surprise, you get it. That just means you made more money. Some of the profits in the major corporations in our nation right now are based on that kind of thinking. But Ms. Powers, if you could please explain to me where I could understand a little better. You mentioned 30% higher than 40% higher, and I got lost in that part of your explanation. But I really appreciate you looking at the fact that a single bid, would it need to be rebid? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Absolutely. So if the base bid work only is awarded, then that work will come in at 44% over the engineer's estimate for the base bid work. If the total project is awarded, which would be the base bid plus bid alternate one, then that total percentage over engineer's estimate reduces down to approximately 30%.
Thank you very much. Thank you. That's all my questions.
Thank you. Do we have any public comments?
We need to read our script here.
If you wish to make a public comment on agenda item number 6F, please press the raise hand button now, or if you're calling in today, press star then 9 to be added to the speaker queue. Thank you.
At this moment, nobody has their hands raised.
Great, thank you. So with that, if there's no other questions or comments from the authority, I will entertain a motion.
So moved, Perot.
Second by Long.
Thank you. Can we take a roll call vote, please?
Yes, thank you. Supervisor Long?
Yes.
Supervisor Ramirez?
Yes.
Councilmember Perallo?
Yes.
Chair Lopez?
Yes.
Mark King?
Yes.
That motion passes unanimously.
Great, thank you. So next item, the next few items fall under both the Camarillo and Oxnard authorities. So the first item 6G is file an update regarding the transition of the Camarillo Airport Master Plan.
So I will take that, chairs. I'm happy to report that we did get confirmation in negotiating with the FAA to convert the grant for an airport master plan at Camarillo Airport to an airport layout plan update. This came, as most of you remember, when the airport department started this master plan process. There was some concerns expressed by community members, and there was concerns and thoughts and discussions about airline service and air cargo, Amazon coming, a lot of different issues. So the county executive at that point had frozen the process. And as I came on board and looking through options with airport staff, we felt that the most appropriate was to change course from a master plan and kind of just do an ALP update. So I'm happy that I was able last night, to give an update to the city of Camarillo, address many of those concerns. And in quick summary, the bottom line is the master plan process looks at a 20-year planning horizon demand for the airport, where in the end, you end up with an updated ALP or airport layout plan. We're kind of not going in that deep into the weeds, and instead just updating the airport layout plan, which we have to have a current one, an approved one by the FAA, so that we can get grant funding for various projects at the Camarillo Airport. New taxiways, new runways, things like that, how have to be on the current master plan, ALP update, so that we can request and receive funding. So we're making that transition. We expect to have a contract and notice to proceed in the first part of September. So happy to answer any questions, but I think we're on a good course at this point, and that's all I have.
Thank you. Chair Santangelo, do you want to handle this one right now?
Sure. Okay, I had a comment, but I will wait. Mr. Bear, I see your hand up.
Thank you, Chair. Director Freitas, I wonder if you would, for the benefit of the public watching, touch on the bottom line bullet points that you closed your presentation with last night at the Camarillo City Council. I think your whole presentation was terrific, but your bottom line at the end really drove home with clarity what the intent of the switch is.
Well, I think, I'm not sure which bullets, I had multiple bullets, but I'll go with the ones I think you're talking about, which were the biggest concerns for the community were, where are we going to try to attract airline service at Camarillo Airport? The answer is no. Were we going to try to attract air freight operations, Amazon, as was thrown out in the past in the media a lot? The answer is no. And would we be looking to extend the runway, from its current 6,000 feet? And the answer is no. And we would continue to be consistent with the joint powers agreement that the county and the city signed back in 1976.
That's exactly what I was asking about. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay. Supervisor Long? Oh, there, your hand is up.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to appreciate the time and effort that Mr. Freitas has done and staff to really communicate with our community members of Camarillo and Ventura County about the actions for the Camarillo Airport, what's happening, what's not happening, making it as clear as we can. I just really appreciate the partnership and going there last night. The outreach for the Wings of Camarillo, just the consistency in the efforts is really appreciated. And also working with the FAA and getting this done in the way our community wanted it done, so that we can approve this and move forward. So I just wanted to say thank you. It sounds really quick and easy here today, but I know it wasn't. And so appreciate that very much. Thank you.
Okay, I don't see any other hands raised. Oh, Mayor Mulchay, go right ahead.
I'll just chime in really quick. I just want to say to Director Freitas, thank you very much. You gave a very pointed and succinct presentation last night to the Camarillo City Council. Mr. Bear was referencing that as to exactly what the airport layout plan is, what it is not, how it differs from the master plan, and the reason why you're pursuing the airport layout plan. So something I fully support, and I greatly appreciate how you've handled this whole situation and how you're proceeding. So thank you.
Mr. Perella?
Yes, I have no vote on this item, but question was raised in my mind. Mr. Freitas, can you address this? If there's been a commitment that no airport transportation will be coming into Camarillo, does that mean that any idea of any airport transportation, commercial, is 100% directed towards Oxnard? And the follow-up question is, will that limit the amount or size of plane that can service those companies that would come to Oxnard due to the shorter runway in Oxnard than Camarillo?
Well, first of all, I would not use the word no transportation coming into Camarillo. Yes.
I misspoke. No commercial transportation.
Commercial airline service. Yes. So we still maintain our 139 commercial service certificate at Oxnard. That would be the focus. There's a lot of questions Supervisor Ramirez brings up and others what that is, and we can have a discussion. I'll touch on some of that in my director's report. But the focus is on Oxnard Airport from a commercial scheduled airline service, no question about that. The size of airplane is really dictated on not only the length of the runway, which, just to be clear, the difference between your two airports is about 60 feet in runway length, which is pretty much nothing in operating from an airplane standpoint. We're really limited by the size on the capacity of the runways, how heavy of an airplane could operate on our runways. And so that's really what dictates what size airplane could operate at Oxnard Airport from a scheduled airline service perspective.
Thank you very much.
Hey, I echo what Mr. Bear and Mr. Mulchay said, and I really want to thank you, Mr. Freitas, for coming to our meeting yesterday. It was really important, not just the substance, but how we explained it to the community. And I also want to give a shout out to our Camarillo City staff, because they've worked really hard to communicate the switch from the master plan to the ALP. And I think they've done a really good job too. I've already received a couple emails and some messages on Facebook today thanking us for working so closely with the airport and listening to our community. So really appreciate you coming out last night.
Well, thank you. I'd like to just end with one comment is one, the very talented staff that I work with that quite frankly do all the hard work, and our board of supervisors and our county executive office. Those are the ones, I'm just carrying the message. It's those folks that are making those decisions, and I'm just, carrying the work. My wife reminds me on a regular basis, I got to surround myself with a lot of talented people because I'm not that smart. So I'm fortunate to have those very talented people doing all the hard work. So I don't want to forget that.
I think we all feel that way, but I shouldn't speak for everybody. I feel the same way. And at this point, I will entertain a motion.
So moved.
I'll second. Long.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Let's have a roll call vote, please.
Supervisor Long,
Yes.
Supervisor Ramirez,
Yes.
Mayor Molche,
Yes.
Chair Santangelo,
Yes.
Vice Chair Bear.
Yes.
That motion passes unanimously.
Okay. Item H. Now I see why Chair Lopez had such a trouble. I'm just going to leave it at item H. Staff report.
Aaron, do you want to take this or you tell me? You good?
Sure, yes. I just didn't want to step on your toes to introduce. Chair Santangelo, Lopez, authority members, thank you. The Department of Airports has worked closely with the FAA to coordinate grants to support Part 150 noise compatibility studies for Camarillo and Oxnard airports. The objective of these studies is to provide the airport, our surrounding communities, and public officials with a document which outlines the baseline noise conditions and a plan to address noise-related impacts in the vicinity of the airport. This process will involve significant stakeholder coordination with a goal to bring all of the facts and data together to develop a mutual agreement regarding noise abatement, noise mitigation, and land use planning. Therefore, staff is requesting your commission recommend the Board of Supervisors authorize. Dave, would you mind going to the next slide? Move the listed recommendations, which would allow us to accept a grant for in the amount of $795,944 for each airport, along with the authorization to award a contract to Kaufman and Associates in the amount of $770,944 conditioned upon receiving the grant funding. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Bear, I see your hand.
Yes, indeed. As Director Freitas knows, we've talked about this offline. I keep an eye on social media with regard to the airport, just because there's a lot of conjecture and inaccurate information out there. And some of the more recent posts and discussions involved this. And I'd like to hear from Director Freitas or Ms. Powers about two issues. And this, again, I'm quoting from social media, so don't think this is coming from me. One discussion is that the reason that we're doing a noise study is to prove that bigger jets, cargo jets, are quiet enough to be brought into Camarillo Airport. True or false?
Director Freitas will say that is false. That is not what the purpose of a FAA Part 150 study is.
Okay. The next bit of conjecture was concerning Kaufman and Associates. And as we all unfortunately may recall, they were responsible for the master plan that went so badly 2 years ago, whenever it was. And the concern was raised that bringing Kaufman into the fold on this is again a subterfuge, because Kaufman was pushing for bigger, noisier aircraft at Camarillo Airport. Response to that?
I'll let Aaron talk about why we use Kaufman, and that kind of goes to Council Member Perello's, when we advertise for on-calls, and so she can go into those details. I'll leave that for her. But I'll start by saying that a consultant is led by the team. In this case, it would be the airport leading the direction. So it's, I've been doing this for 30 plus years. The consultant takes the direction from the entity that they're working for. So to say that the consultant was driving a particular direction, I would say is not fully correct. So I would just leave that there. And Aaron, if you would kind of talk on why we're using Kaufman on this.
Ms. Powers, before you go, can I just respond to something Director Freitas said? And that is, taking it to the next step, Director, is it true that the Department of Airports is not directing Kaufman to find a way to bring bigger, noisier, heavier jets into Camarillo?
You mean you'd like me to reiterate my bullets from earlier? Yes, we are not bringing in airline service. We're not bringing in air freight. Amazon's not coming to Camarillo. That is correct.
And Kaufman's not part of that at all?
No.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And as to address your question about why Kaufman, Kaufman Associates is a aviation planning and environmental firm that was selected as part of a 5-year consultant selection process that the airport undergoes. And what that means is that every 5 years, in compliance with county regulations and also the FAA's requirements for consultant selection, we do a qualifications-based selection process where we put out solicitations and solicit requests for qualifications. We review those qualifications, we interview firms, and based on the upcoming projects, the firm's experience, and the airport's needs, and what how the different firms will be able to fulfill those needs, the airport makes a selection. Most recently, that process occurred in December of 2020. And so Kaufman Associates is part of that selection process, or was selected as the one of the primary firms. And that is why for the master plan, for the noise studies, they are the firm that the airport utilizes. And just to make sure that it doesn't mean they automatically get the work either, because especially for these grant funded projects, we have to solicit, we work together with the consultant to draft a scope of work. We actually send that scope of work to the FAA to get concurrence that they agree that the scope of work is viable and that they would support funding that should a grant ever come for, be able to fund the project. And then from there, we actually do an independent fee analysis. And then we negotiate with the firms to make sure that, that the cost is in line with industry, and we share that with the FAA.
That's very helpful. Thank you. I just think it's so important that the public know what the process is and what the intent of the process is. I think that'll be very helpful in if the right way to put it is tamping down conjecture and rumor and innuendo and letting us deal with facts and what the facts are concerning Camarillo Airport, facts are concerning Oxnard Airport. Let's deal in facts and not rumor and conjecture. So thank you for that.
Sure. Thank you.
And Chair,
You're muted. You're muted, Susan.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't see any other authority members that want to speak. Should we read the public comment statement?
Thank you very much. If you wish to make a public comment on agenda item number 6H, please press the raise hand button now, or if you're calling in today, press star then 9 to be added to the speaker queue. Thank you.
We're promoting Ben DiBenedetto. And I will be timing this off screen.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you. You have 3 minutes.
Great. Thank you so much. Well, it's real clear that Camarillo is in the clear. Thank you for that. Also clear that Oxnard is not. And we're not doing a plan, we're doing a replan of the master plan. I don't know anything about a noise abatement study, so I've been doing some homework. And in the last land use study for Oxnard Airport, Kaufman Associates actually did do a study, a noise abatement study, and I can't find that study anywhere. It was done in 1997. So my first request is that somebody, the airport authority, the advisory board, county board of supervisors, or someone involved in this, make this report available to the public. I think looking at that report would give us an idea of who Kaufman is, how this goes, and what our options are or may not be. That being said, my biggest concern is the scope of work be handled with a completely transparent situation. And I have to tell you, honestly, deep down, I'm not sure whether that would happen or not. So the more I can find out about this, the better off I'm going to feel, and maybe some other people as well. So that being said, I think the most important thing is obviously the planning committee, planning action committee, on who's on it and who's not on it, and what kind of a documentation are they going to get? What are they going to overlook, if they overlook anything, or if their forward-looking plan is complete enough for us to really understand where this airport's going to be 5 years from now. So for the existing development, I don't want to just see city planning and zoning officials. I want to see somebody from the planning commission and not just the staff. Additionally, I think any developer that has a permit or entitlements on any project in hand that's been approved also have a position on the committee. I think that that should include the North Shore development and the Portofino development at minimum, and copies of their DEIRs, their EIRs, CEQA reports, and all existing and or entitlement projects be part of the study. For future development, I think all plans, reports, documents for projects to be included, for example, the Teal Club development,
30 seconds.
And the proposed park on the east side of Ventura Road across from the runway. Do I still have time? Because I know your clock's not working.
15 seconds. Go ahead.
Okay. So I want the neighborhood councils to have access to the material, the neighborhood councils that surround the airport, so that stakeholders can be involved in at least knowing where the process is going and how it's going. Thank you so much.
Right on time. Thank you. And I see Barb Filkins and promoting.
Make sure I'm off mute this time. I want to add one thing to this. Anybody who makes public comment on the noise study also needs full transparency in terms of their associations and relationships, whether they're commenting as an individual or as an individual that is connected to a organization, whether real estate developer or whatever. End of comment.
All right, thank you. I see no other public members wishing to speak.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for your comments. Okay, unless the authority wants to have more discussion, I will entertain. I think, and Dave or somebody, do we need to have a motion for both Camarillo and Oxnard?
Each, yes, separate.
Each. Okay, so let's, oh, Mr. Perello, I see your hand.
Thank you very much, Chair. The last two public comments. I asked a question earlier if County Council could address it. Do we have council with us tonight?
We do not.
Okay, the lady that asked the question, an answer would come from County Council. Just how much legitimate leeway legally do we have to require people to do what she requests? I'm not taking a side one way or another on a request, but public comment, at least in my city of Oxnard, you're asked to provide your name. You can provide your address, but there is no legal requirement that you have to do either. You're allowed the ability to make a public comment. So your county council, if they would ever show up at these meetings where serious issues are discussed, we could get an answer. Also, Mr. DiBenedetto, his concerns. I can tell you, the member of the public of the board, and I apologize, sir, your name escapes me right now, but you've commented several times tonight. You brought up the concern about just dealing with facts because of social issues. This would be a perfect thing. Mr. DiBenedetto is asking a very clear facts and evidence matter, no matter what your facts are stubborn things, and whatever may be our wishes, our indications, our inclinations, or the dictates of our passion, they cannot alter the state of facts and evidence. A former president named John Adams said that, not me. And it's smart, because if we give them the information, they can argue all they want, but that's the actual information. Instead of somebody coming off pie in the sky saying the sky's falling, running on Chicken Little. And I would make the recommendation that this information that he's provided be given to the neighborhood council chairs. It was mentioned earlier what happened to the Camarillo City Council meeting just recently, this week, that and there's been a lot of discussion, a lot of the public. And I mentioned earlier when it came to an issue with Oxnard, it's the tip of the iceberg. There are more and more people getting involved in that issue. And if all the facts are on the table, we can argue about the facts, but arguing about conjecture is a whole different ballgame. So that'd be my request, Chair, that we give direction to management here to get that information out, share it, and not just share it with specific people, put it out, maybe even put it on your website. All the information with respect to what Mr. DiBenedetto requested, whether information like that is available for any project in Oxnard or Camarillo, for the betterment of this organization. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Perello. Okay. Would anybody like to make a motion?
I'll make it motion to approve staff recommendations.
I'll
Second.
second it.
Well, I'll let you second. Take it.
Okay, so for Camarillo, we have a motion and a second. Let's have a roll call vote, please.
Supervisor Long,
Yes.
Supervisor Ramirez,
Yes.
Mayor Molche,
Yes.
Chair Santangelo,
Yes.
Vice Chair Bear.
Yes.
That motion passes unanimously for Camarillo.
Thank you. And for Oxnard, do we have a motion?
I'll make the motion, but I will make an amendment to the motion that the request that I have made for sharing the information be included in the motion.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Can we get a roll call vote, please?
Yes, on the amended motion, Supervisor Long,
Yes.
Supervisor Ramirez,
Yes.
Councilmember Perrello,
Yes.
Chair Lopez,
Yes.
Markey.
Yes.
The amended motion passes unanimously.
Okay, so that I lost my place. Okay, so that brings us to the next item. We have a staff report. This one's long too. So.
Aaron, if you would dive into this one, thank you.
Yes, this hopefully will be the last item I need to bring before you tonight. So Chair Santangelo Lopez, authority members, each year the airport looks to enter into annual contracts to support projects at Oxnard and Camarillo airports. Annual contracts are general contracts utilized for specific professional services wherever they're needed, and the type of services provided by consultants by these type of service consultants include engineering and plan review, specification writing, construction estimation, project oversight and inspection, as well as planning and environmental review. One example of how these contracts get used that was very recent was we had a pavement failure, a rapid pavement failure occur at a critical taxiway at Camarillo Airport. And we were able to utilize our annual service contract, which is like an on-call contract, to get Javiation to help us design and provide construction oversight and inspection to turn that repair around and complete the project with construction in a few days. These annual contracts have to be approved by the Board of Supervisors. And once a contract is in place, work orders are issued against them. It's important to understand that this action does not actually result in an immediate fiscal impact, as there's no obligation to these consultants for any work unless a work order is issued against the contract. The current budget has programmed $625,000 in annual contracts. We have several firms listed, and they're also the services and the amounts for each firm are listed in Exhibit 1. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, do we have any questions? Seeing none, do we have any public comment?
Happy to make an announcement. If you wish to make a public comment on agenda item number 6I, please press the raise hand button now, or if you're calling in today, press star then 9 to be added to the speaker queue. Thank you.
Doesn't look like anybody has their hand raised.
And chairs, I I just wanted to point out that Barb Filkins is a public member who is asking to speak, but it may be for the prior item. So that was a potential oversight.
Okay. Ms. Filkins, are you here? Did you want to speak on this item?
Not necessarily this item. I just wanted to make a comment, and I'm not sure of the legality of it, but my comment about transparency on public comment, you know, whether I know public comment normally is an individual, but the connections relative to that individual to other organizations that may have an impact on what they're speaking on. And I don't have a good answer on that. I mean, I work in the water world. I'll ask my counsel in terms of that. It was just a thought, and if Bert can pick that up and carry it forward, it'd be good. Just conflicts of interest, that's all.
Thank you. Okay. Mr. Perella.
Yeah, the speaker brings up a good point, but I know that there's very specific rules, but I also know that in Los Angeles with land use issues, at one time, I don't know if it's the Board of Supervisors or the council, they made lobbyists wear tags that indicated they were lobbyists. They couldn't slide in as Joe Blow or Mary Jane. They were lobbyists, paid mouthpieces. And that is significant when the public decision makers know that. So that's, I mean, maybe there's going to be something address that, but public comment is a very sacred thing. But I do understand when you have a person that is a paid, basically a hired gun, and they are very articulate and their job depends on getting the message across, the incentive is to sell. Not necessarily accurate, just sell. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I will, unless there's any other discussion or comments, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Go ahead, Supervisor.
No, we're just keep it moving. Thank you.
All right, I'll second.
Thank you. Let's have a roll call vote.
For Camarillo Airport Authority, Supervisor Long. Supervisor Long.
Yes.
Thank you. Supervisor Ramirez.
Yes.
Mayor Molche.
Yes.
Chair Santangelo.
Yes.
Vice Chair Bear.
Yes.
That motion passes unanimously.
Okay, and for the Oxnard Authority, do we have a motion? I will.
So moved.
Okay, thank you, Supervisor Ramirez. I will second. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes. Supervisor Long.
Yes.
Supervisor Ramirez.
Yes.
Councilmember Perello.
I'm sorry, yes.
Thank you. Chair Lopez.
Yes.
Mark Kane.
Yes.
That motion passes unanimously.
Okay, the next item is the draft voluntary noise abatement procedure for both Camarillo and Oxnard.
Right, I will kick that to Dave in our office, but I want to open with, this is one of the many things we are doing to focus on noise issues at Oxnard and Camarillo. And Dave, if you'll take it away.
You bet. Chairs Lopez and Santangelo. This is Dave Nafee, Deputy Director. We've been working as staff and working with neighborhood associations and other stakeholders. And this is an interim update on that effort. So it's an element of how we communicate with pilots and other users of each airport and provide them good relevant information about flying at these airports, good useful information on how to fly friendly. And so this is it's an opportunity for us to have outreach to that community, give them information that they can consume to make their operations safer and to make the operations that they do conduct hopefully more friendly to the people on the ground below. So to that end, we have last time brought you an example pilot guide from that we were in development for Oxnard Airport, and we have taken that input and we have developed one for Camarillo Airport as well. I have interim editions of both, but this is really just an update. So there's plenty more input that we do expect to have from our businesses on the airport, as well as another round with the neighborhoods if they so desire, and the public at large can comment on that, as well as our advisory bodies. And so as I said, the goal is to make sure that we have good, relevant information available to pilots in multiple channels, and including directly to flight schools, taking them copies of it, et cetera. So this is really just an update for that. It's not the final, but we wanted to just dip in and show you what we've been working on. And if you'd like to provide feedback on what was provided in the board packets, and what might occur to you as you review these on screen, that'd be great. So Camarillo Airport, this is a plan view that you're looking at on the screen, and we're depicting the various flight patterns. In red, we would have how to leave the area and avoid noise sensitive areas. In green, how to arrive to the airport environment, avoiding noise sensitive areas. And then in blue, we show the traffic pattern on the south side of Camarillo Airport, which is largely over undeveloped agricultural fields. And so we're depicting that in plan view, and we also have a oblique angle so that it's easier to kind of imagine yourself in the cockpit and what you're looking at from each side, and then depicting kind of the track over the ground that you might fly. So this gives you kind of a way to imagine it in 3 dimensions. And so we have these pictures that help tell the story, the thousands of words that pictures do provide, and then the limited number of words that are also provided useful information about how to contact the various businesses and the various radio frequencies. So that's for Camarillo Airport, and we think that we're off to a good start there. And then Oxnard Airport, which we've had a chance to see already, is depicting 2 flight patterns in blue for those aircraft that remain in the pattern and do what we call touch and goes. And so we have a fairly close in pattern on the left side of when you're flying to the west off of the runway 25 as it's known, and to fly the left pattern as it's called. If you're going to fly the inner pattern, then you would climb fairly rapidly and then turn to the left before reaching Edison Canal and then flying downwind along Woolly Road. And we find that that is yielding good results in terms of minimal impact if we're flying on the south side of the runway, which is the customary way that pilots are trained to fly a traffic pattern with turns to the left. We also show an extended pattern where we fly past the shoreline before turning to the left, and so continuing to climb until you reach the pattern altitude roughly 1,000 feet off the ground, and before turning back toward Woolly Road and flying that downwind leg. And then the third leg of that is on the north side of the runway, and we have encouraged all of the stakeholders, including air traffic control, to consider flying the non-standard pattern with right turns, because that it takes the benefit of flying over some undeveloped land on that side, and we're either spreading the noise energy rather than concentrating it all in one area. So the distribution of that, I think, also has some benefit. So we have those three patterns for the local traffic depicted, and we believe that that's yielding results. As Mr. Cronshaw pointed out, there is some relief that's being noticed by the neighborhoods, and so we appreciate that from our pilot community, who's understanding the importance of it and taking information such as this and putting that into action. So we're seeing the benefits of that on the ground. We also have a 3D rendering of that traffic pattern work there in 3D view, as well as the helpful information for Oxnard Airport. And so, like I said, this is an interim look at it. There are refinements that can be made, and we continue to listen to all of our stakeholders as we develop that. So we will we'll be looking to finalize these items throughout the third and maybe fourth quarter, especially if we have a new position brought into staff whose focus will be on noise issues and communicating with our various neighbors. And so we will see additional results from that and additional effort. So I wanted to thank all of the stakeholders who have contributed and those who will contribute to making this work. And with that, I'll pause and take questions if we have some. Thank you.
Okay, do we have any questions? Mr. Bear.
First of all, this is terrific stuff, and it's a really good step towards helping mitigate the noise issue. And from a pilot's perspective, these 3D graphics, the one, for example, it's on the screen now, are really, really helpful. So thank you for all the hard work that went into all of this. Could you scroll back to the overhead view of Camarillo? There you go. I know I had said this to you, Mr. Nafee and Mr. Freitas, in an email. A couple of suggestions I have for this graphic. One is it shows the if you see on the left quarter or third of the graphic in the middle, 877 feet MSL, right as they're turning from the upwind leg to the crosswind leg. That's a pretty steep climb for a small underpowered aircraft like a Cessna 150 or 152, for example. I think the better placement for that notation of 877 MSL is when they turn from the crosswind leg to the downwind leg. I think that's a reasonable, get to pattern altitude by the time you turn downwind. So I would suggest moving that 877 MSL flag to the turn just below where it's depicted now. The other issue is on the far left of the graphic, it shows the departure out along the 101, which is perfectly fine, except that shortly after this graphic ends is Oxnard's airspace, and that starts at 2,000 feet. I'm sorry, it ends at 2,000 feet. So I think there should be a notation on that exit departure procedure that pilots need to be aware that Oxnard's airspace is ahead and they need to be either cleared through Oxnard's airspace or 2,000 feet or above. But again, otherwise, I mean, I realize those are pretty nitpicky suggestions, but otherwise these are terrific graphics, and I commend staff for putting all the hard work in. This is really a good piece to the puzzle for noise mitigation.
Thank you. Appreciate those comments. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention the volunteer efforts of our Oxnard public member, alternate member, Mark King, who's volunteered some time to fly these patterns at Oxnard Airport and film them. And so we'll be able to produce some video content that we can put on our website that'll supplement this information.
That's terrific. Really great.
Mr. Perello.
Yes, thank you very much. This is very nice. A couple of questions. This will be shared with the neighborhood councils and just hopefully a positive idea. I have no idea what MSL means, and I find no key on any of these pages. If you were to edit this, I would hope you, because if this goes to a neighborhood council, they're going to look at it. They're going to, what is that? What is this? I have no idea. I'm a non-pilot, non-flyer on this board appointed by my city council. But I'm asking that question. I think it would improve it because this is going to go to the people that are asking a lot of questions. Specifically, if we can go to the Oxnard map, please. Bingo. Two questions I have. Again, not a pilot. We have them, and it's often referred to by people that come up and speak, the Edison Canal. The Edison Canal is pictured here, and they show the planes turning before the Edison Canal, and then they show the planes turning after the Edison Canal. What distinguishes what kind of plane can turn before the Edison Canal or after the Edison Canal? Is it this, both planes can have the option to turn before, or one plane is allowed to and one's not? Can you please explain that?
I'd be delighted to. What we call this is an aspiration. We would aspire to have the pilots voluntarily choose to turn before reaching that canal, and we will label it if it isn't. That's a great observation. And the simplification and reduction of terminology that's inaccessible to the public is another great comment. I love that comment. But the extended pattern would be if there's multiple aircraft in the traffic pattern, generally that requires you to extend before turning your first left turn. And so what this says is that if you don't turn prior to reaching the canal, head on over the beach, keep flying for a ways before turning, so that turning motion isn't happening directly over the top of Oxnard for us. So that's the point.
And that brings my second point. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, sir. The point, and I can't speak for the members that spoke here today, but I can attest that in the Oxnard Shores area, that's a very developed area. The homes are much closer than standard anywhere in pretty much in the county. And there's a lot of homes and a lot of people. If the planes would simply go out over the water and make their turn, it would reduce the amount of complaints, I believe. It would reduce the amount of heat, and it would lower the level of passion felt by people in those neighborhoods, because that's what gets people on social media. And that's what gets pictures of planes that you'll have. I've been there, having to go through. I represent this district, having to go through and try and find out where there are problems in the district, getting people calling you, and you'll sit there parked at the beach and you'll watch plane after plane goes out over the ocean. But there's always a couple of them that turn way short, and it's always the same plane. And I'm making an assumption, and we know what assumptions do. But I am making an assumption that the person is practicing touch and goes, because it's the same plane, same colors, and they will always turn short over the houses. If the pilots would volunteer, it would lower the stress level of your staff tremendously. And I think this is really good. And I promise you, this will be going to all the neighborhood councils affected, making complaints with respect to the noise. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Bear.
To just answer Councilmember Perella's question, MSL stands for mean sea level. So mean sea level, which is basically altitude above sea level. So where it says here 1,044 MSL, that's 1,044 feet above sea level, which is what the altimeter, which measures altitude in a plane, would show as the pilot's making the turn. Using the Oxnard example, they would want the pilot to have an indication in their altimeter of 1,044 as they make that turn to the downwind leg. As to Mr. Perella's comments about turning at the Edison Canal versus turning at the beach, frankly, I always turn at the beach. I think it's the courteous thing to do for the neighbors. But I suspect that rental pilots and people who are paying instructors by the hour don't want to take the extra 5 minutes to go out to the ocean and then come back. So they are turning short of they should be turning short of the Edison Canal. And I think that's a question of educating we're working towards educating the flight schools about the noise sensitivity in those areas and working with them to be sure they either they gain altitude quickly and turn before the canal, or they just go out to the beach and turn beyond the shoreline.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bear. Thank you.
Supervisor Ramirez.
I just really want to emphasize the need for, I realize this is for pilots who understand what these acronyms are, like MSL. I didn't understand it, so thank you, Mr. Bear. Really important. I've been in meetings since 8:30 this morning when people were using technical language, and the public, members of the public, and I consider myself pretty educated about things. So many abbreviations, acronyms, people feel they're just not understanding what it means. So I think it's in this case, along with other cases where non-pilots or the average person who doesn't know these things, it's important to kind of do a glossary. We've even here at the authority, sometimes I'll be wondering, what does that mean? And I'm looking for the glossary, and sometimes I get the answer and sometimes I don't. So just a word to the wise here for better communication. Thank you.
Thank you.
And back to Mr. Bear.
Sorry to take so much time. I think Supervisor Ramirez and Councilmember Perella's comments are well taken. As a pilot, and these are really intended for pilots to be able to see what the Fly Friendly program is. As a pilot, we're all going to know what MSL stands for. And it's a non-issue for a pilot. But I think in terms of educating the community to show them what's being done to try to mitigate the noise issue, Supervisor Ramirez's suggestion of a glossary, or maybe under the legend box, a little explanation or something of what MSL means and anything else that might be considered pilot or airport jargon, so that the average non-pilot can read this and understand what it means. I think those are really good suggestions, and would encourage you, Mr. Nafee, and staff to see if they can be incorporated.
Mr. King.
Thank you. Just a couple of points here in regards to MSL and AGL altitudes. At the Oxnard Airport, while I do agree that we need to have these definitions, and I think maybe another version of this that is designed around the general public in regards to the terminology, AGL, MSL at the Oxnard Airport is a difference of 45 feet as measured from the airport reference point. So the relevance there, I find it really nitpicky on something that really needs to come out and get into the public, that we're doing something, and to get this out to the flight schools and the other venues where this information can be seen. And to Mr. Bear's point about a 150 or a 152 not being able to achieve altitudes, this is a technique thing, and I've flown these patterns in a variety of airplanes recently and done a lot of timing and time from takeoff to altitude to make these turns. And when you see the video, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about here. And we're not talking about going out 5 minutes over the water at a reasonable climb speed of 80 knots to turn over past the shoreline. It takes 45 seconds once you pass the shoreline. I've done all the timing on this, and I'll have a lot of information for Mr. Nafee here in the next few days. That's all I've got.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Bear?
Yes, it's me again. I think Mr. King brings up a good point, and I threw out 5 minutes just as a number It could be less. And that's why I think to the extent possible, people should go to the shoreline and beyond to make their turns, and be conscious of the noise issues below. If it's 45 seconds, so much the better. And the bottom line point though is it's not a great deal of time to continue your upwind out to over the ocean and then turn back to the crosswind and the downwind. And I think that's something pilots should do whenever possible. And we need to educate, our users of the airports.
Mr. Perrella.
Yes, I appreciate Mr. King's comment, but what does AGL mean?
It's above ground level. It's the measurement of altitude above the ground. So
Thank you very
the
much.
ground can be higher than the ocean. In most cases it is. And that's why you have two different measurements. But to Mr. King's point, Oxnard Airport is almost at sea level. So the AGL and MSL numbers are I think he said 45 feet difference. So it's really a negligible difference.
Thank you very much. I've really learned something here. Thank you.
Okay, I'm looking to see if we have public comment.
Barb is asking to speak. And maybe Mr. Di Benedetto. So we'll bring both of those into the panel.
I can't refrain. To Mark King's point, 150s, 172s, 182s, the decathlons, most of the single engine airplanes can manage the pattern quite nicely, turning before the canal. There's some issues with the high performance twins. I fly an experimental that happens to be loud, and the adjustment of Willie Road goes down a little bit. It's also at a higher AGL altitude than the single engine patterns. So anyway, I'll be very interested to see the videos. And a comment.
All right, and Ben?
Yeah, thank you so much. Realize that in Oxnard Shores, the shoreline is less than 100 yards from the beachfront homes. You're looking at 300 feet. You fly out to the shoreline and turn at an altitude of 600, 700, 800 feet and turn downwind 300 feet from my house is virtually flying over our house. And I would advise that one of you guys or gals come to the beach someday when they're doing touch and goes and see just how far downwind they go. I guarantee you they don't go all the way to Woolley before they make their turn, complete downwind turn to the airport. That's why we have flights every day over our homes. They don't fly straight out to the shoreline. Once they pass the canal, they start going downwind and they're flying right over Oxnard Shores. So we get them twice. The issue has been discussed in regard to development of the west of the airport since 1998 that I know of. I bought my house in 2000. I've been here 22 years. I'm not a newbie. In fact, the environmental impact report for the North Shore development, which was updated in 2019, states clearly that air traffic will turn before the canal and not overfly their development. When this was brought up to the advisory commission and the airport staff some time ago, maybe 6 or 8 or 10 meetings ago, we've been beating this dead horse. Staff replied, North Shore development will never be finished. Whether the project is finished or not, it's an entitlement. They have that entitlement in their plan. And it goes beyond that. The county of Ventura airport, the city of Oxnard, the county of Ventura, and the airport demonstrate the fact that they have crosswires because the current land use report clearly states, quote, page 3-9, for noise abatement purposes, radar vectors are given to aircraft in order to avoid noise sensitive areas. ATCT staff indicates that aircraft departing runway 25 are assigned a heading of 270 degrees between 7 a.m. and 8 a.m. and 255 degrees between 8 a.m. and 9 p.m. That was designed so they wouldn't overfly the canal and violate the entitlement of North Shore development. It's going to be there someday. Why are we designing a pattern for exit to fly over an entitled area that has been granted? This is insane. The whole extended turn pattern appeared 2 versions ago, and we've been talking about it, and yet it's in every version. It can't be there. I'm done.
Okay. Mr. King, your hand is up.
No, it's not.
Thank you.
I did want to point out something to, I can't pronounce his last name, but to Mr. Ben. He's talking about visual flight rules and instrument flight rules. And those are 2 very separate and distinct animals that, as late as it is, we don't have time for it, and I don't think it's the right venue. That's all.
Thank you. Okay, do we have any more comments? I don't.
None that I see.
I don't see any either. And I don't think we have a recommended action. This was just for us to provide staff. Is that correct, with input?
That's correct.
Okay.
We wanted to offer you an update.
Thank you. Okay, so we will move on to item K.
All right, this is our last item. What we're asking for is approval and authorization for the Director of Airports or designee to sign the Master Administrative Agreement between County of Ventura and University of Alaska Fairbanks to establish a working relationship for unmanned aircraft systems, UAS, related to testing, research, and education. So big picture is that the county operates 2 airports. We typically will lease office space and hangar space to aircraft owners, operators. This is a partnership similar to what I did up in the Bay Area in Contra Costa County. We handle those businesses that want to do some new testing. This partnership with the University of Alaska Fairbanks, anybody that's doing testing of new aircraft, drone testing in particular, new technology, also needs approval from the FAA to enter federal airspace to do flight testing. So that's where this partnership comes together, is the University of Fairbanks of Alaska helps that new entity go through the process that can take as long as 18 months. It's expedited with University of Alaska Fairbanks and their team of about 15 people because they've been doing this for more than a decade. They started in Alaska. They now have partnerships in Hawaii, Oregon, Contra Costa County up in the Bay Area was the first in California. We're looking to be the second one. This again allows us to attract new businesses. We talked about, what's the value of Oxnard and Camarillo airports. This allows us to attract jobs and new technology businesses which are friendly. Again, the new technologies are typically electric engines, they're quiet, environmentally friendly. Again, new types of jobs. Dave, do we have some of the pictures of this in the slide deck? Maybe. So, what is this? This isn't, pilots might be concerned or neighbors might be concerned. This isn't hundreds of new drones coming in. This is one airship. It could be a small airship like a blimp that this person was looking to do small delivery with a small blimp. If you go back to the previous slide, this was a team of young kids from university overseas. It was part of an advanced test. You would ride this like a motorcycle. This was their project that they were proposing. And then the one before that, this is a small size drone that you see, the kids using all the time. But the technology was this box, so that you could put this box, say at an agricultural setting where you had farm equipment that you wanted to inspect from a security standpoint. You could be at home. The drone, the little box would open up, this little pad. You would fly from home your drone, inspect from a security standpoint, make sure everything was okay. It would fly back into this box, close up, recharge, and be secure from the elements and from a security standpoint locked in. So I mean, there's just a broad, all the way up to what we've talked about before is air taxi. Folks that are sitting, someday, and you've heard talked about eVTOL, electric vertical and takeoff. The Jetsons are coming. There will be a day in which you go, say, to the Oxnard airport, park your car, and get in a 4-person air taxi and fly over to Burbank any time of the day. Imagine 8 a.m. you get over to LAX in 15 minutes instead of having to fight traffic on the 101. That is what they're envisioning. We've already had discussions with companies that want to do those things. And then we have this partnership because we sit in such close proximity to Port Hueneme, some of the advanced things they're doing, obviously Point Mugu. On the military side, there's a lot of opportunity to partner with all of those entities where we sit. So again, the key is these won't be flying over homes and residences. That's what the approval with the FAA requires, is that most of these, like this that's in front of us right now, did hundreds of hours of just hover taxi. They had it tethered so that it couldn't fall over, and it just sat 10 feet, 3 feet off the ground, just hovering. You need hundreds of hours to prove that before you do some longer range testing. Most of that was typically take this and take it to a nearby farm where there might be 1,000 acres and you go do flying. So it's more about attracting new types of businesses to our 2 airports. And our partnership is, we control the property, at least that. And then when they come in, we've built our resume so it makes it easier for them to go through the FAA process when they want to take the next step and fly in airspace. So happy to answer any questions you might have.
Mr. Bear.
I'm just curious, how did Ventura County get hooked up with the University of Alaska at Fairbanks?
As I think I mentioned earlier, that was my relationship, something similar that we created because of our proximity to Silicon Valley and the Bay Area. That is something we created 3 years ago up in those 2 airports, Byron and Buchanan Field up in the Bay Area. And I saw a similar opportunity here, again, because of our proximity to Port Hueneme, Point Mugu, the LA Basin, all that technology. They need a place to kind of do that. And similar to the Bay Area where we are in Contra Costa County, that testing can't go on at all in congested airspace, near Burbank and LAX. It's just far too congested. So we have an opportunity to kind of attract some of those things. So that's the idea and the history.
Supervisor Ramirez.
Well, I think this is great because these are uses, I think in general, that would be less annoying to the many people live in the proximity to the Oxnard Airport. But also, I just want to mention, I was in a webinar recently where there's potential use of drones to detect waste, water waste, and I will even say might be a little disturbing about privacy issues, detecting people or areas that are using too much water when they're not supposed to. So drones are here. They are doing some good things. They're doing some things that some of us might worry about privacy being invaded. I know I'll just say as an aside, our Oxnard Police Department, when I was on council, took a look at the use of drones to do things that would not interfere with people's privacy, but things like who's setting off fireworks, looking for things that would potentially be safer for our police to go into an area and see what's going on before they have to expose themselves to harm. So I like it. I think the air taxi, really, it's the time of the Jetsons here, but let's be modern. I like it. Thank you.
Supervisor Long?
Thank you. I agree with Supervisor Ramirez in that our times are changing and that this is a really great opportunity for us, especially with our drone capabilities that we have at the Navy base and to private companies that are nearby. We have our colleges here as well. And this just really is right in the line with all of those. So I wanted to say thank you very much for the foresight of thinking about this, Mr. Freitas, and bringing this to our attention to do. So I appreciate it very much.
Okay. Do we have any public comment? Oh, Mr. Perella.
Thank you, Chair. Impressive, and I hope that if we do hook it up with the junior college, we'll consider Oxnard College system. Thank you.
Okay.
You can read the statement if it's okay.
If you wish to make a public comment on agenda item number 6K, please press the raise hand button now, or if you're calling in today, press star then 9 to be added to the speaker queue.
I don't see any hand raised. Do we have any written comment?
Nobody has submitted a written comment, Chair.
I just wanted to make a comment pretty much in line with everybody else, but I think this is really exciting, and I think this is it is the future, and I think this is a way to it stimulates the economy. If this can grow, then it can bring really nice paying jobs to our area as well. So, okay. So I think we need a motion first from Camarillo.
Okay, I'll make them.
Scott, you and I are right on.
I think every single motion we've stepped on each other. I'll let you make this motion.
Okay, will you second it?
I will, with pleasure.
Roll call vote, please.
Okay. Supervisor Long?
Yes.
Supervisor Ramirez?
Yes.
Mayor Molche?
Yes.
Chair Santangelo?
Yes.
Vice Chair Bear?
Yes.
That motion passes unanimously.
And for Oxnard, is there a motion?
I move the recommended action.
Second.
Great. Roll call vote, please.
Supervisor Long?
Yes.
Supervisor Ramirez?
Yes.
Member Perello?
Yes.
Chair Lopez?
Yes.
Markey?
Yes.
That motion passes unanimously.
Great.
And that concludes the new business.
All right, we'll dive into the director's report. I'll go through it fairly quickly here. Because the Board of Supervisors does not meet in August, we are expecting that we probably will not have any items for an August meeting for the airport authorities, either one. But we'll have that discussion with the chairs if they have some item that they would like to bring forward in August. As you all know, we reported the Board of Supervisors approved the private hangar leases back in May 24th. And we are in the process of working with Kahota and their board members to kind of do a test group, if you will, as we look to transition those 220 tenants between Oxnard and Camarillo airports, and kind of take it in phases. We're expecting to be about a 9-month transition, but we're working with the board members as test a group. We iron out all the things that we need to do, make sure that the pilots understand what we're looking for and what the process looks like before we dive into. We're going to give ourselves a break through the air show and then probably start with moving through the groups in September. Camera system, security camera system, that we finally got the project is funded and a vendor on board, and they estimate a completion for both airports in the fourth quarter of this year. So that is moving forward. Noise update. We talked about a whole bunch of things. We did advertise our public information officer. Working title will probably be something along the lines of communication and engagement manager. That was posted 2 weeks ago. We're working with HR to it's a continuous announcement until we get enough candidates to start interviews. But we are expecting that we will have a candidate selected and in place by August. Tied with that is, and the key is, again, with this position is focused on noise with the community members, pilots, flight schools, and getting, I mean, that's the key. You've heard me say this many times, and, the community, and I understand wants to see changes immediately, but what pilots have been doing is what they've been doing for about the last 50 years. And we're looking to modify that, and they're open to it, but we've got to educate them. And just because we've put it on our website, what we're looking for them to do, it's a lot more complicated than that. And we've actually got to get this person on board to go out to those flight schools of Van Nuys, Santa Monica, Whiteman, I mean, all of those in the LA basin, and educate those flight instructors and those students what we're looking for them to do specifically at Oxnard and Camarillo airports. And then we get into the flight tracking system we've talked about, which will help that new person. That too should be installed by fourth quarter of this year. Again, that will, where a plane is flying, what altitude, who the owner is, and those kinds of things will help us do some analysis of where we need to target the education. So that is due the fourth quarter of this year. Noise subcommittee, we had revamp of the noise reports, both for these committees, the authorities, and the AAC. First meeting happened today. Had some good ideas of what would be helpful, not only to airport staff, but the community when we publish those. So we'll probably see a first draft to this committee either September or October as we work through that. Some of the recommendations have been proposed. Dave stole a little bit of my thunder in a discussion with Mark King, member of the Oxnard Authority. A discussion led to an idea that because of the training he already does for some of the flying he does, he's got an airplane that's set up to show what it looks like from a pilot's perspective when we want you to turn before the canal or out past the water, so that we can put that on a video link to our website. So when pilots are coming into the area, or our new person is doing education with those flight schools, so that they know visually what it looks like. We've got, those pilot guides, we're working on those too. But I want to thank and recognize Mark again for that work and donating his time doing that. Talked about all the other things for that. We did get the 5 acres and the vacant 7 acres at Oxnard. We did get proposals. We only had one for the 7 acres, so we made a selection, which was urban air mobility for the 7 acres. That's right next to Golden West there at Oxnard Airport. And then 5 acres, we selected the team that's led by Aspen Helicopters, which is just adjacent to that. They've got a partnership of about 3-4 folks that includes some hangar development. There's even a museum and restaurant. If they can make that work, that's in their proposal. So moving forward, we will be taking that to the board to get authorization to start negotiations probably in September. So you'll see some of that coming through this group as well. And then I want to give updates, Dave, if we have starting with Cloud 9, some of the progression, if those haven't seen it. We've talked about the development starting, and now they've got some verticals that are coming up. So some of the large steel project is happening for the 4 25,000 square foot hangars. These are the first 2 going up in the last couple of weeks. And then Colson, the emergency rescue fire helicopter, I saw it in the news media last couple of weeks. We have this stationed in coordination with from our County Fire Department kind of is with us through the entire fire season as a quick response. This is one of the largest helicopters in operation to help with, I believe it carries 3,000 gallons of water to help firefighters if something should pop up in the county. Based at Camarillo, ready as a resource for the entire county, very beneficial. And then the last is the emergency. You heard us talk a bit. This was the emergency pavement repair at Camarillo that we went through. I want to recognize airport staff, Aaron Powers in particular, pulled this all together just days before the long holiday, just before the 4th of July, was able to pull it together and get it done. So that's all I have. The only other thing I wanted to add is in a discussion previously, I believe it was Supervisor Ramirez had asked that we in the September or more likely October meeting had an agenda item regarding the leaded fuel 100 low lead issue. So we're looking to do some preparation for that item in more than likely October. And that's all I have. Unless there's any questions.
Mr. Bear?
Two quick questions. The urban air mobility, is that related to eVTOL? The 5-acre parcel at Oxnard?
It is the 7-acre parcel, and that is their focus, is accommodating new technology. Yes.
That's great. That's great. So that's the first step towards introducing that technology at Oxnard. That's fantastic. The Colson helicopter, am I correct that that's paid for by Southern California Edison? It's not a taxpayer funded helicopter?
That is what Ventura County Fire advised us as well. Yes.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. And the next item on the agenda is the monthly reports. If there's any questions or comments. Mayor Molshay?
Just a quick comment. I just want to say thank you for increasing the contrast on the noise complaints. I can actually see that map and understand where they're coming from. I appreciate that. And then also thank you for including those letters out to the pilots that took off from Camarillo in violation of the 1976 GPA. So they took off between the hours of midnight and 5 a.m. And so notifying them of their violation, I appreciate that.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Molshay. If there's no other comments or questions, we'll move on to item 9, correspondence. Is there anything to share? I'll take that as a no. Okay. Next up, authority comments. Any comments from authority members? Supervisor Ramirez.
Just really quickly, it's been a long day, a long meeting. I have some questions about the accident that happened Saturday or Sunday here in Oxnard with the pilot hitting the fence before the runway. I know that we've got a National Transportation Safety Board investigation, but I had this question if somebody could answer it. One of the public speakers mentioned that the airplane went into a spiral. I hadn't heard that before, and I'm just wondering if you could confirm that, Mr. Freitas, because what I saw was just a straight line into the fence, and it landed on its feet.
Yes. To answer your question is from looking at the incident, yeah, I would know that I did not see a spiral. I'm not sure if anybody said that, but you are correct of what you saw. That looks like a direct fly into the fence.
Thank you. I have an emergency here, so I'm going to sign out right now. Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you. Mr. Bear, did you saw your hand go up?
I wanted to respond or help Supervisor Ramirez with the accident, but she's gone, so I won't waste any time.
Thank you. Any other comments from authority members? Mr. Perello.
If someone can explain further, because I did hear the plane lost power and then spiraled and flew around over various areas, then was able to come in. It sounds like they did their damnedest to try and come in and get on a runway, but they, that's as far as it got. So if the gentleman can clue us in, I'm interested, because I did see that park there, and it's not very far from where a previous plane clobbered the baseball backstop, right where they're going to have a visible sign, observation site at the new park.
Yeah, what I would say is that all of us would be speculating. There is a reason that the FAA and TSB take typically 12 to 18 months to come with a final decision on any accident investigation. And their amount of detail, which is why aviation is one of the safest transportation systems in the world, is that they'll look at, did the pilot get enough sleep? Were they on any medications? Did they have a cold? Did they have an argument with their significant other? I mean, unbelievable detail. And then they go into the airplane. Who maintained it? Where did they get fuel last? Was there some sort of contaminate? I mean, it's the whole thing, which is why it takes that long.
Okay, I'll withdraw my question. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that would be the most appropriate, as we wait for that final report to come out, which, they'll do a preliminary report 6 months or so out, and then they do a final report typically 12 to 18 months.
Okay, I'll change, Chairman, I'll change my question. In a situation like that, where tremendous amounts of the population saw the plane sitting there, when the plane is removed, is it going to be repaired where it's flyable again? I mean, is it a total loss? Is it just a matter of some body work, or is that off the table?
Yeah, that's outside of our realm of that decision. I mean, again, first, it's usually the NTSB or FAA requires that it be held so that they can do their investigation. And then after that, it's, between the owner and the insurance company, is this plane totaled or not? And, I don't know the damage well enough to give that answer. Age of the airplane, all of those things would be factors in the decision.
Thank you, Mr. King.
Keith covered essentially what I was going to say, so I don't know how to lower my hand.
No problem. Thank you, Mr. King. And Mr. Freitas, perhaps, when these reports are made available, perhaps we could have a discussion around it, given I think, different questions and concerns on how an incident like this is addressed and what happens, after. So I would maybe ask for that when it is available, so that we can have a greater discussion, given the interest of both Supervisor Ramirez and Councilmember Perello.
I think that would be a great idea. I mean, it's important to know that, these weren't student pilots. These were certified pilots. The most recent accident in Oxnard wasn't a plane flying to the airport. It was flying overhead and had an engine malfunction issue, whatever that was, and then used, the Oxnard airport as an emergency landing. So very unique situations, and for sure, I think it'd be appropriate for us to dive into this.
Thank you. And I believe I see a hand from the public. Is it possible for us to take that public comment at this time?
Barb is joining the panel now.
Thank you. And do we need to have the statement read, Mr. Nafee?
For the authority comments?
Yeah, I think we're okay accepting the comment, correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
I seem to have been fairly popular this meeting. I teach aviation safety for CAU, and aviation is considered one of those ultra safe, high risk environments like nuclear power plants. And that was back to my comment earlier about wait for the NTSB report. But there's all a bunch of preliminary stuff that the community unto itself thinks about what happened. So I think that before we put a pin in the, and say this was a touch and go accident or whatever, there's a certain amount of discovery that needs to be thought about, both from the FAA, the NTSB, the local pilot community, and the industry tends to be somewhat self-correcting on safety. So to that point, I'm happy to participate as an instructor for CAU, as a pilot in the local community, and, supporting Mark King and Keith with discovery on stuff like this. So I think that there needs to be a separation between what the media reports, what the general public thinks, and what ultimately comes out as the problems. And that's all I'll say for the moment.
Thank you, Ms. Filkins. I appreciate your comment. And with that, if there are no other authority comments, we will go ahead and adjourn the meeting. As previously mentioned, we will be going dark in August, so the next meeting is on September 8th.
Concur.
All right, well, thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Good night.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night, everybody.